This happened last Halloween. I was 35 and just moved to the small town of Maplewood. I thought I was escaping city life for something quieter. The old houses and friendly faces felt welcoming. I spent the day setting up decorations for trick-or-treaters. I even lit some pumpkin spice candles. That night, as I waited for kids to knock on my door, I noticed something strange. Across the street, the abandoned house had flickering lights coming from within. It had been empty for months, its windows grimy and weeds embracing the front steps. The lights danced. I felt a chill creep down my back. Was I imagining things? I brushed it off. Days passed. I couldn't shake that feeling. I didn't sleep well. At night, I heard what sounded like a child's laughter drifting from the empty house. I kept looking out the window, but whenever I did, silence greeted me. I convinced myself it was just the wind playing tricks. Then one evening, I saw it, a fleeting shadow behind the dusty curtains. Was it a trick of my tired eyes? I approached the house, my heart beating fast. I knocked on the door, hoping maybe someone had moved in. No answer, just silence. I felt silly for standing there. Maybe the neighbors were right when they said to stay away. That Halloween, I sat inside, trying to ignore my nerves. Happy children rang my doorbell, and I handed out candy until my bowl was empty. But the feeling of being watched lingered. I turned off my porch light, hoping to hide. Just then, I looked out the window again, and there it was, a small outline of a child staring at me through the grimy glass. Panic surged within me. I wanted to scream but couldn't make a sound. I remember thinking if I turned away, the image would vanish. It didn't. The laughter rang louder now, calling to me. I stood frozen, unable to look away. All at once my feet moved toward the door. But I hesitated. I turned back to my living room, the soft glow of my candles flickering wildly. But there was still a whisper with the laughter. Help me. I felt icy dread fill my stomach. Then I heard it again, and it got louder. It echoed in my mind. This time, it was clearer. Help me. I spun around to face the window, empty. My heart raced. I cursed my imagination and sank into my couch. Hours passed, and the silence returned, wrapping around me tightly. I didn't sleep that night. I had a feeling that something was still there, watching. Now I can't forget that image of the child at the window. What did I see? I still check that abandoned house every night, but it remains untouched, and I can't shake the feeling that something is waiting for me to return. That whisper lingers. I turned around. Nobody was there. I'm still trying to understand. The days dragged on after Halloween, each one blending into the next. I tried to dismiss my memories of that night, but my gaze often fell toward the abandoned house. Something about it tugged at me, something unfinished. Curiosity and fear were wrestling for control. One afternoon, I decided to stop by the local coffee shop. Maybe a warm drink would clear my head. As I entered, the shop was buzzing with chatter. I stood in line and noticed two kids at a table, whispering and peeking at me. The girl pointed toward me, her eyes wide with something like recognition. I felt a tingle down my spine. "Do you live near that old house?" the boy asked, his tone half daring, half worried. I glanced at them, unsure how to respond. "Yeah, but it's just a broken-down place," I said, trying to sound casual. "Nothing to worry about." The girl leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, it's not just a house. There's something in there. I saw it." My heart raced. "What do you mean?" I asked, and they exchanged glances before the boy spoke again. "There was a girl. She was in the window," he said. "She looked sad, and she asked for help." I felt a chill. This wasn't just my imagination. "You saw her?" I pressed. "Yes," the girl whispered. "Last Halloween, we were trick-or-treating. She needed help." I couldn't breathe. Suddenly, I was transported back to that moment, my eyes fixed on the small figure through the glass. "What did you do?" I asked, afraid of the answer. The two kids looked at each other, then back at me. "We ran away," the boy said quickly. "Everyone knows to stay away from that house. It's haunted." Haunted. I wanted to laugh at how cliché it sounded, but a nagging dread settled in my chest. I thanked them and left the shop, my mind in a whirl. Walking home, I felt drawn to that house. I fought it, telling myself it was crazy to go back, but my feet carried me forward. The shadows lengthened as the sun dipped below the horizon. As I approached, the air grew still, heavy with something I couldn't name. Then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of laughter echoing from within. It was high-pitched, like that of a child. I froze. What if it was just a trick of the breeze? Yet that laughter was too clear, too urgent. Just as I thought to turn back, a light flickered from an upstairs window. I couldn't resist any more. My hand reached for the doorknob, trembling. It was cold, as if it had been waiting for me. That was when I heard another sound, soft weeping. It tugged at my heart. I pushed the door open with a creak. The smell of dampness and old wood enveloped me, sending a shiver down my spine. I stepped inside, heart racing. Shadows danced around me, and as I squinted into the dim light, I thought I saw a small figure at the top of the staircase. My breath caught. Then everything went dark. The darkness swallowed me whole. My eyes adjusted slowly to the gloom. For a moment, I stood completely still, straining to hear something, anything. The laughter was gone, replaced by an eerie silence. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling. No answer. I took a cautious step forward. The air felt charged, like the calm before a storm. All my instincts screamed at me to leave, but my feet wouldn't obey. They carried me deeper into the house. I made my way toward the staircase, where I had spotted the figure. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears. The wooden floor creaked beneath me, the sound slicing through the oppressive silence. I reached the bottom of the stairs and peered up, squinting into the shadows. "Is anyone there?" I called again. My voice bounced off the walls, but there was still no reply. With a shaky breath, I stepped onto the first stair. It felt like stepping into a void. I climbed slowly, one hesitant foot after the other, each step a battle against my rising fear. As I reached the top, I noticed the door to a room slightly ajar at the end of the hallway. A sliver of light peeked through, beckoning me. I approached, my heart racing. The sound of weeping floated through the crack, a soft, pitiful sound that made my skin crawl. "Who's there?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The weeping stopped abruptly. I stood frozen. "Please, I just want to help," I added, hoping for a response. But instead, the door swung open on its own, revealing a darkened room. I hesitated. My body was caught between the instinct to bolt and a deep-seated urge to uncover the mystery. Then I saw her. A small silhouette stood in the corner, illuminated just enough for me to make out her features. She looked about my age, with long, tangled hair and wide, sad eyes that glistened with unshed tears. My breath hitched. "Help me," she whispered, her voice weak and distant. "What do you need?" I stammered, stepping further into the room. Something inside me wanted to reach out to her, yet a voice screamed for me to turn back. "I can't leave," she said, her voice trembling. "They won't let me." A chill ran through me. I felt it, not just the words, but an unspeakable weight in the air. I glanced back toward the staircase, contemplating escape, but her gaze held me captive. Suddenly, the room felt colder, the shadows thickening like a living thing. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind me. Panic surged within me. "Let me out!" I shouted, banging on the door. The figure stepped closer, her face illuminated by the sliver of light. "You can't help me," she said softly, "but you can help them." Then everything shifted. The walls of the room closed in, the shadows swirling, and I felt myself being drawn toward her. My feet moved without my command, and just as I reached her, the room exploded into darkness once more. I gasped, finding myself back at the entrance of the house. My heart raced wildly, and the door creaked open gently behind me, inviting me in yet again. That was when I realized I wasn't alone at all. Someone, or something, was still in the house with me. I stood frozen at the entrance, confusion mixing with fear. The door behind me slowly swung wider, the creaking of old hinges an unsettling welcome. I felt the air thicken around me, the darkness inside the house like a vortex. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I took a hesitant step inside, and the door closed softly behind me, sealing me in. I forced myself to breathe. "Hello?" I called again, my voice shaking. Silence enveloped me, but tension crackled like static. I looked around, half expecting to see the girl from before, but there was only emptiness. Just as I decided to turn around and leave, I heard it, footsteps. They were faint but distinct, echoing from the hallway to my right. My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't alone, something was moving in the shadows. I moved cautiously toward the sound, each step increasing my anxiety. As I reached the hallway, dim light flared from a room at the far end. It flickered like a candle, barely illuminating the walls lined with faded photographs and peeling wallpaper. The footsteps came again, closer this time. "Who's there?" I tried to sound firm, but my voice cracked. No answer, just the sound of my own heartbeat, a fast rhythm trapped in my chest. I stepped into the light, revealing the room. It was empty, save for a small table at the center. On it lay an old music box, its lid slightly ajar, and a chill raced down my spine. I remembered the girl's words. "But you can help them." I approached the music box, my curiosity battling my dread. With trembling fingers, I lifted the lid, and a haunting melody filled the air. The sound was sweet and melancholic, and as it played, shadows began to swirl around me, drawing my focus back to the hallway. There was movement, definite and purposeful. Suddenly, a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, growing clearer as it stepped into view. It was a man, dressed in tattered clothing. His face was blank, devoid of expression, and his eyes bore into me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Help her," he murmured, his voice a chilling whisper that seemed to echo in my mind. I stumbled back, the music box's melody still wafting around me, an eerie lullaby that beckoned the shadows closer. "Who are you?" I demanded, fighting the urge to scream. "What do you want from me?" He pointed toward the hallway, and as I followed his gaze, I saw the girl again. She stood at the far end, but now she appeared more ghostly, her edges blurred like a fading photograph. "I can't leave," she repeated, her voice distant. "You must." "Leave!" I cried, a rush of desperation flooding my voice. "How can I help you?" The shadows surged around me, cold and suffocating. I couldn't breathe as the music box's melody intensified, drowning out my thoughts. My instincts kicked in, and I turned to run back toward the staircase, but the walls began to close in, and I felt a firm grip take hold of my arm. Suddenly, everything went dark again, like being swallowed by the void. I was pulled in multiple directions at once, and I screamed into the silence, my voice swallowed whole. I fought against the pressure, but it was no use. Then, just as quickly as it began, the darkness vanished, and I found myself standing alone in the entrance once more, breathless and trembling. But the door behind me had slammed shut. The sound reverberated in my ears, and without a doubt, I could feel that I was still not alone. I backed away from the door, my heart racing. The sound of my breathing echoed off the walls, each inhale sharp with panic. I scanned the entrance hall, searching for any sign of movement, but the stillness felt alive. It wrapped around me like a cold shroud, and I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching from the shadows. Then, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I turned quickly, but it was just a curtain, swaying slightly as a draft slipped through an unseen crack. I was being ridiculous. I needed to focus. The girl, the music box, the man. What did it all mean? I had to get out. I felt the walls pressing in, the memories of the shadowy figures unsettling. I stepped toward the front door. It was locked, I realized. I tugged on the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged. I turned back to the hallway. If I could just find a window or another way out, maybe... A muffled sound came from deeper in the house. I hesitated. Hadn't I just promised to help? Maybe the girl knew something. I took a deep breath and moved forward, each step heavier than the last. The same shadows whispered around me, creeping closer with every stride. The music box's haunting melody lingered in my ears, teasing me with its lullaby. Suddenly, I heard a faint sob, delicate and heart-wrenching, drifting through the air. It was coming from the room at the end of the hallway. With a sudden burst of courage, I approached the door that led to the dimly lit room. "Hello," I called out, but my voice barely cut through the silence. No response. I slowly opened the door. Inside stood the girl, her figure translucent and shimmering like a mirage. She looked at me, eyes wide with fear. "You came," she whispered, relief apparent on her face. "Are you all right?" I asked, but the question felt hollow. "I thought you could help me," she pleaded. "I need you to find it." "Find what?" I asked, my confusion evident. "What do you need?" Before she could answer, the room darkened. The shadows surged forward, thick and suffocating. I felt an icy chill wrap around my throat. I tried to push through them, but they held me back. "Don't listen to him," she cried, her voice rising in desperation. "You need to fight." Suddenly, the ground shook, unsettling the wooden floorboards beneath my feet. "Help her!" The man's voice echoed from somewhere in the shadows, merging with the faint music from the box. Everything went black as the shadows engulfed us, the walls closing in around me. I gripped my head, disoriented, feeling as if I were being pulled in every direction. I gasped for breath, panic clawing at my throat. Then, just as I thought I would be lost forever, the weight vanished. I stood alone, breath fogging in the cold air of the room. The girl was gone, and I was surrounded by just shadows and silence. But then I felt it again, something lurking behind me. I turned, heart racing. That's when I saw it. A hidden door, slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling out like a siren's call. It beckoned me in. I hesitated, knowing that whatever awaited on the other side could either be my salvation or my doom. I pushed the door open slowly, the creak of the hinges slicing through the heavy quiet. The light spilled into the darkness, illuminating a narrow staircase that wound down into the unknown. A strange sense of urgency filled me. I had to find the girl. I had to find whatever it was that she needed. I stepped carefully onto the first stair. It felt solid beneath my foot, but a twinge of dread tightened in my chest. The air grew colder as I descended. Shadows danced along the walls, and the faint music from the box played softly in the distance, each note taunting me. I gripped the wooden railing, squinting as I moved further down the stairs. At the bottom, I found another door, this one heavy and ornate, contrasting sharply with the plainness of the staircase. The light flickered as I approached, and I noticed strange carvings on the wood that seemed to writhe and shift like the shadows surrounding me. I hesitated, but then pushed it open. Inside, the room was illuminated by dozens of candles, their warm glow flickering and casting long shadows. The music box sat on a small pedestal in the center, its surface polished to an eerie shine. It was like it had been waiting for me. A chill ran through me as I stepped closer, remembering the girl's plea. Find it. But find what? I scanned the room, searching for answers. The walls were lined with photograph frames, all dusty and forgotten. I stepped to one side and picked up the first frame I found. The image inside showed a family, happy and smiling, but as I focused on their faces, a familiar girl stood among them. My breath caught in my throat. It was her, the same girl from the hallway. Before I could take it all in, I heard a whisper behind me, barely audible. "You shouldn't be here." I whirled around, heart pounding. It was the man from the shadows, his face now visible in the candlelight. He looked older, weary, but his eyes burned with intensity. "Leave now, before it's too late." "Wait," I called out, trying to grasp the chance to understand. "What did you mean by find it? Who is she?" He stepped closer, the shadows pooling around his feet. "You don't understand. They are trapped here. You're putting yourself in danger. You have to run." But I didn't want to. I had to know. And then, with a sudden rush of dread, I felt it, a rush of air behind me and then a loud crash. The music box had flipped over, its melody warping into something discordant and unsettling. The man turned sharply, his face contorted with anger and fear, then motioned again for me to leave. "Now!" I glanced back at the chaos that was unfolding. The candles flickered wildly and the shadows writhed, seeming to reach out for me. My heart raced. I had to make a choice, stay and confront whatever darkness this was or flee into the unknown. Just as I was ready to run back up the stairs, I saw her again, the girl appearing among the shadows, her eyes pleading. "Help me," she cried. With a deep breath, I stepped forward, torn between fear and determination. "What do you want me to do?" And as I asked, the shadows surged, pulling me in, and the room began to spin wildly. Everything dissolved around me, and I was left with the echo of her voice. "Find it." Darkness surrounded me once more, and just when everything felt lost, a light pierced through the blackness. I reached for it, desperate as I was pulled deeper into the void. I landed hard on a cold wooden floor, groaning as I pushed myself up. The light encased me, glowing softly now but casting long shadows that flickered against the walls. I could barely catch my breath, still disoriented from that spiral into darkness. I was in a new room. The air felt stale, filled with a scent that reminded me of wet earth. I hesitated before standing fully, scanning the space around me. Old furniture was piled in the corners, neglected and dust-covered. An old mirror hung crookedly on one wall, reflecting a blurry image of myself, a ghostly version of who I had been moments before. Then I saw it. Across the far wall something glimmered in the dim light. I approached carefully, my heart pounding. It was a box, similar to the music box from before, but bigger and intricately carved. The designs on it twisted and turned, almost alive, just like I remembered. I reached out to touch it, feeling an unexpected warmth radiating from the polished surface. Just as my fingers grazed the wood, a sound made me jump. A soft, giggling laughter floated through the room. I spun around, expecting to see the girl or the man from before. But it was just me and the echoing sound, until it came again, a light, playful tune that felt sinister in this strange place. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. My heart raced as I felt that familiar sense of being watched. "Find me," a voice whispered, faint yet so close, as if someone was right behind me. Fear prickled my skin, and I stepped back, bumping into the box. The glimmering surface pulsed gently under my touch, and I caught a glimpse of a swirling reflection, a vision of the girl standing in a foggy field, stretching her hand toward something unseen. I turned back quickly to the open space, my thoughts racing. Was I supposed to find her? And if so, how? I felt the hairs on my arms rise as the laughter erupted again, louder now and mixed with whispers. It felt as if the shadows were pressing closer, eager to consume me. Then I remembered the man's warning. They are trapped here. I feared I was now one of them. Suddenly, the room shifted. The walls closed in, and the corners began to blur. I stumbled, searching for stability, but found only the ominous smile of shadows. I had to move. I darted back toward the door I came in through, but it was gone. A wall stood there now, solid and immovable. Panic surged within me. "What am I supposed to do?" I shouted, desperation upset by the laughter that echoed in the hollow space. Then, as if to answer, The box trembled beneath my fingertips, and somehow I knew what I had to do. I crouched beside it, feeling for a latch, something that would open this treasure. Whatever was hidden inside might be the key to all of this. I needed to know what it could reveal. Just then, the giggles morphed into chilling laughter, and I felt a presence behind me. I swung around, and that's when I saw it, an outline barely visible in the dim glow. Someone was there. Fear gripped me. Whoever it was, they were not welcoming. "Help me," I whispered into the darkness as the figure stepped closer, and everything else fell away. My heart raced as the figure moved in closer. It was a woman, her face obscured by shadows. The dim light barely illuminated her features, but her eyes shone with an unsettling brightness, reflecting the light in a way that made them seem almost unnatural. "Who are you?" I stammered, inching backward. The box was still within reach, but I could feel the warmth fading, replaced by a chill that seeped into my bones. "Find me," she echoed, her voice a soft, haunting melody that both mesmerized and terrified me. I gripped the edge of the box to steady myself. "You have to find me, before they do." "Before who?" I asked, my voice shaky. I glanced around the room, half expecting shadows to spring to life, to pounce on me at any moment. The laughter faded to a whisper, swirling like smoke, and I felt lost in it. She took another step forward, and I instinctively flinched. "They want to keep me hidden," she said, her tone urgent. "You have to open the box. It's the only way." The box felt heavier in my hands, almost vibrating with anticipation. "What's inside?" I was afraid to ask. She didn't answer, her gaze fixed on me, pleading. Before I could respond, the laughter surged again, harsh and piercing. It felt like nails scraping against the walls. The shadows stretched like fingers, eager to pull me away. I had to open the box. It felt crucial. But did I dare? With a deep breath, I set my resolve. "Okay," I murmured, fumbling with the latch, my fingers trembling. It clicked loudly, echoing in the silence that followed. The top of the box creaked as I lifted it. Inside was a tangled mess of objects. I peered closer and saw a small doll, its face covered by a cracked porcelain mask, a compass that spun wildly, and a faded photograph of the girl, but nothing that resembled that woman before me. I reached for the photograph, my fingers brushing against the edge, and suddenly a wave of memories flooded my mind. Shadows moving, whispers growing louder. I stumbled back, almost dropping the box. "No!" she cried, her voice rising above the chaos. "You have to listen!" But my focus had shifted to something else, the compass. It began to shake violently, pointing toward the center of the room where the shadows seemed to thicken. "What's happening?" I shouted, panic clawing at my throat. The box slipped from my grasp, spilling its contents onto the floor. The woman's eyes widened. "You have to follow it." Before I could reply, the shadows swarmed around me, writhing and swirling. A strong wind pulled me toward the center of the room. I struggled to resist, but it felt like they were trying to lead me somewhere. I looked back at her, but she was slipping away, the light in her eyes dimming. "Find me!" she repeated, her voice fading into the uproar of my racing heart. Then everything went dark. I jolted awake, heart pounding in my chest. The air was thick and cold, a tangible weight that pressed down on me. I blinked rapidly, trying to make sense of my surroundings. I was no longer in that dimly lit room. Instead, I found myself lying on a damp, moss-covered floor, illuminated only by the ethereal glow of moonlight filtering through the trees. Where was I? I scrambled to my feet, scanning the dense forest around me. It felt eerily quiet, too quiet. I coughed, the musty scent of damp earth filling my lungs. The compass! I fumbled in my pocket, but it was gone. My mind raced back to the box, the woman, her words, the feeling of being drawn somewhere. Find me. The whisper lingered in my mind. It was impossible. I had just been holding that box. The memory played back sharply, but I had no time to dwell. Voices echoed softly in the distance, murmured like conversations that faded in and out. My pulse quickened. Who else was out here? Forcing myself to move, I stepped cautiously between the trees. Shadows danced around me, shifting with the wind, but it felt different this time. There were no taunting laughs or malicious intentions, just something else, a longing. Then I spotted it, a flickering light further ahead. I approached it slowly, staying low. Just as I neared, the light intensified, and I squinted, heart racing. A fire flickered in a small clearing. I hesitated for a moment, breath heavy in my throat. Should I approach? The voices grew clearer, but they didn't sound like people. They were almost musical, a haunting lullaby. Curiosity fought against my fear, but I inched closer, drawn to the warmth of the fire. What I saw made me stop dead in my tracks. The fire was surrounded by a circle of masked figures, weaving in intricate patterns, faces hidden behind mysterious, colorful masks. They danced gracefully, their movements flowing like water, as though they were part of the very shadows surrounding them. The music came from them, rhythmic and hypnotic, pulling me in. Suddenly, one of them turned, and my breath hitched. It was the woman. Her eyes glinted from beneath a sparkling mask, but it was unmistakably her. "You came," she said, the layers of her voice intertwining with the music. "What is happening? Where am I?" I demanded, stepping forward. "They've been waiting for you," she said, her tone now laced with urgency. "You need to understand the truth about the box. They won't let you leave until you do." Panic swelled in my chest again. I needed to know more, but felt stuck in place. The figures twirled slightly closer, the air around us thickening with a profound pressure, like gravity shifting. My pulse throbbed in my ears. "Please," I said, desperation creeping into my voice. "I don't know what any of this means." Just then, I caught movement behind the dancers, dark shapes creeping out from the shadows of the trees, slowly encircling us. A chill ran down my spine as dread washed over me. Then, without warning, they lunged. I had to find a way out. I bolted back toward the shadows of the trees, my heart pounding in my chest. Panic consumed my every thought as the dark figures surged, moving with unsettling speed. I barely made it into the cover of the forest before I turned to look back. The masked figures continued their eerie dance, and the woman stood steadfast, looking directly at me. "Run!" she shouted, but my feet felt glued to the ground. No matter how hard I tried, the images of the swirling darkness and those laced whispers echoed in my mind, still too fresh and terrifying to dismiss. I glanced behind again, only to see the dark shapes inching closer, their eyes gleaming like dying embers. Fear spurred me into action. I turned and sprinted deeper into the woods, branches clawing at my skin as I dodged trees. I could hear the chorus of music behind me, absorbing the air and my breath, an unfathomable melody that twisted into my very bones. Somewhere in the distance, I heard her voice again. "Find her. She needs you." The words felt like a tether, pulling me back even as I fled. Each step felt heavier, but I couldn't turn back. Not now. Instead, I focused ahead. The forest thickened, and I barely kept my footing as I darted through bramble and undergrowth. The laughter, once joyous and sweet, now echoed as cruel taunts that followed me like a haunting chorus. And then, up ahead, a break in the trees, a clearing. I burst into it, skidding to a halt. My breath hitched at the sight before me. The music box lay nestled amongst the forest underbrush, glowing faintly. It seemed to hum with an energy of its own. Breathless, I approached it, my memories flooding back. I had to open it again. Something essential lay inside. With trembling hands, I knelt and lifted the box from the ground. The forest hushed around me, a stillness falling as I flicked open the lid. The familiar melody danced through the air, and the shadows paused at the sound. The objects from before were there again, but this time there was something new, a small, delicate key nestled at the bottom. I grabbed it and held it tightly. If she needed help, perhaps this was the key to finding her. My heart raced as I turned back toward the forest, searching desperately for any sign of her. Suddenly, the dancers emerged into the clearing, their movements flowing in perfect harmony with the haunting melody. Panic surged as they surrounded me again, but I stood my ground, clutching the key. "You must give it to her," a voice rang out, and I recognized it as the woman's, her presence dancing among the shadows. I could almost see her through the masks of the figures. "Where is she?" I yelled, desperation tinging my voice. The masked figures pointed deeper into the heart of the woods. "Find her!" they chorused, and for once their tone felt less menacing and more insistent. With renewed determination, I plunged back into the thicket, following the guidance of their outstretched hands. As I ran, the music box's melody began to warble, warping back to something chaotic. I pressed onward until I reached what appeared to be a forgotten path, overgrown yet still somewhat visible. My lungs burned, but I pressed on, heart racing. The whispers intensified, melding with the music, urging me forward. I could feel a presence growing nearby, a warmth, and then there was light. I stumbled onto the same clearing I had seen in the photograph, the girl standing in the center. She looked brighter now, more solid, and I could sense her urgency. "No!" I cried out, racing towards her. "I have the key!" As I approached, the shadows behind me swelled, creeping closer. "Help me," she reiterated, her eyes wide with fear, but this time they reflected something different, hope. "Take it!" My voice rang out as I held the key toward her, desperation boiling inside me. "You need this!" Time slowed as she raised her hand, reaching for the key. The connection between us pulsed like a string, pulling tight. Just as I was about to place the key in her palm, the darkness surged forward, engulfing me with a force I couldn't resist. I felt myself being pulled backward, away from her, the laughter echoing with a fearsome power as the shadows spun wildly around us. But in that chaos, I could still see her, her face illuminated by the moonlight. "Fight!" she shouted, and something within me ignited. I took a breath and cut through the darkness, propelling myself back toward her. The moment felt electric as I thrust my hand forward, the key meeting her grasp. Instantly, the landscape erupted. Light burst forth, blinding and pure, scattering the dark figures and shattering their hold on the world. And together, we stood, her hand clasping mine, and I felt the weight of everything lifting. The shadows shrieked. The music became a symphony of liberation as the barriers around us began to dissolve. But instead of reuniting with the light, I felt myself peeling away from it, as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling. My heart raced, the noise faded, and depths of silence pulled me under. Then, darkness once again enveloped me, and I woke up, back in my living room, the familiar sense of pumpkin spice still hanging in the air, the flicker of candles illuminating the silence, as if nothing had ever happened at all. But the whispers remained, a soft echo in the deepest recesses of my mind. I could almost hear her voice, much clearer now. "Find me," it urged. I stared out my window toward the abandoned house. It stood there, the shadows clinging to it like a second skin. I could still feel their presence, lingering just outside my view. Maybe I was free. Maybe it was over. But deep down, an unsettling truth remained. I would never truly escape that night. I moved from Maplewood soon after, but every now and then, I catch myself glancing toward abandoned houses where laughter gives way to silence, and I'm left wondering just how far I'd go to help someone I'd never fully understand. But I guess I'll never know.